The message of drugs is just this simple. Drugs are bad. If you do drugs, you're setting a bad example. Good evening and welcome to Give Me a Break. I'm Jonathan Carmody. It's Red Ribbon Week. And I'm going to say this. Drugs are bad. You shouldn't be able to do drugs, period. Like, you think, you see all these people on TV thinking, smoking pot's cool, or, smoking marijuana, smoking cigarettes is cool. It's not cool at all. It's drugs. And the message of drug is this: don't do them. That's the whole message. It's just that simple not to do drugs. But this is there's two types of the talk that kids gotta know. There's the sex talk, and then there's the drug talk. Those are the two types of talk. The sex talk and the drug talk. The sex talk is all like, if you're getting to that age, you're discovering, you're going through puberty and all. That's when the sex talk is. But as a parent, if you catch your child doing drugs, the message has got to be set. I mean, what do I do? Do I punish my child? You don't punish your child for doing drugs or drinking. You don't do drugs and don't drink. You don't drink. Those are the dangers, Underage drinking is illegal. You may have those under 21 Texas IDs, but that's going to come back and bite you in the ass. We're not talking about drinking, we're talking about doing drugs. I recently saw a portion of a Home Improvement episode about when this child hides his marijuana because his parents didn't want to know. But when the parents found out, they decided to punish him for I don't know when. It's not important. I mean, they didn't go through the talk with him. The talk meaning, when I was your age, I decided to do this. When I was your age, I went to a few parties. When I was your age, I did this. You tell them about what you experienced as a child, and then, because right away they're going to start asking you, did you smoke pot when you were my age? You know what they're going to say? They're going to say, yes, I smoked pot when I was your age. And it felt good at the time, but then when, I got caught, I had to teach myself, hey, this, and that. I know you guys are going to be like, Boomy, you didn't take drugs. Maybe you should shut the fuck up about doing drugs. I never taken drugs. I never drank. But here's a question for you as a parent. Let me ask you, what do I do if my child does drugs? Do I punish him? Do I publicly embarrass him? Well, for one person you're about to meet, it happened to him. It happened to one child, which you're about to meet. His father says that he caught his son doing drugs. Instead of just sending him up to his room for punishment, he was publicly embarrassed. So, what was the big deal about it? Here's John Hanley, and this was back in 2007. So 18 years ago, the father punished the child publicly by just saying he's not proud of doing drugs. So, what's his goal? We first told you about public embarrassment as punishment last few seasons ago when we first talked about this. Here's John Hanley.
The sign says, I abused and sold drugs, and the dad made his boy wear it around his neck while standing on the sidewalk after school.
I would like to say that I'm not out here doing this to humiliate my son. I'm doing this because I love him. And we do have an extreme drug problem in America, and maybe, it's time for extreme measures that parents need to take to monitor this problem that we have.
The man had recently learned his son was involved with marijuana and OxyContin after reading his MySpace page and decided to take immediate action.
Basically, he said, well, I did do the crime, and I'm willing to serve the punishment for it. And he's taking it all in stride.
The school principal soon came out and asked the father to call it off, which he did, but the boy says he already learned his lesson.
This is embarrassing. I ain't ever doing it again. Shows are for losers. That's all I can say.
The exact words his dad hoped to hear. In West Knoxville, John Haney, 6 News.
Now that was a short report But if I was in this kid's shoe, I mean, let's look back at this.
Father goes to extreme.
To monitor this problem that we have.
The man had recently learned his son was involved with marijuana.
Punishment for it. And he's taking it all in stride.
The school principal soon came out and asked the father to call it off, which he did, but the boy says he already learned his lesson.
Embarrassing. I ain't gonna be doing it again. Shows us for
It's
losers.
embarrassing. Well, look, we've been talking about, public punishments last season, I get what you're trying to do. You say, oh, I love him, so I'm going to do this, help him out. That's not helping me. But, the message of drugs is just this simple. Don't do drugs. If you do drugs, you think it's cool to smoke marijuana, smoke pot, take LSD? You think it's going to be cool to be doing all those things because you saw them on TV? Just because you saw them on TV does not mean that, you get to be like all the others. That's not being cool. That's called being stupid. Bottom line for you parents out there is talk to your child about the dangers of drugs and alcohol. We have school counselors there to help you out. Get set for a murder case unlike any other. We're taking you to Las Vegas. We're taking Las Vegas to where a murder had happened. But who was the actual killer? Next, a Court TV exclusive that you'll never miss. And the stakes are high, the chips are going down, and nobody is willing to take this gamble. Casino. Stay with us. Guns, drugs, money, and the possibility of murder. Tonight, we're taking you to Las Vegas, where the stakes are high, dreams can come true, and you may gamble your way to $1 million. For the person you're about to meet, it ended up being one of those three. But who was the killer in this case? Would it be the ex-boyfriend or the ex-wife or the ex-husband? Tonight, you decide as we give you this Give Me a Break Dateline Court TV Network exclusive all about Casino. Here's Keith Morrison.
Take a $10 cab ride from any one of the billion-dollar monuments to Vegas success. Roll past marriage parlors and girly shows, and you'll find a grittier shade of kitsch. In old downtown, they call it Glitter Gulch. In the middle of it all sits Binion's Horseshoe Casino, and surrounding this place, like so much neon and flashing light, is a mystery. Jeff German writes for the Las Vegas Sun.
It's a story that has really everything. It has love, betrayal, sex, greed, buried treasure.
And it starts, as these stories often do, a long time ago. Back when old man Benny Binion was kicked out of Dallas for running illegal gambling dens. He came to Vegas back in the 40s and started the Horseshoe Casino. He put his face on casino chips, and it was his idea to dole out drinks and steak to keep you inside the casino gambling. A grateful Vegas built a statue in Betty's honor just outside Glitter Gulch. Son Ted was groomed to take over. Becky is his sister.
Ted idolized his father, and he tried very hard to emulate things that my father did. But it's kind of hard when you have a bigger-than-life father to live up to that image.
And then, when Benny Binion died in 1989, his kids squabbled among themselves.
I don't think the family has ever been really affectionate with each other, the brothers and sisters. I think they genuinely loved each other, but I think money somehow clouds things.
Besides money, there was Ted's long-term heroin habit. Ted, friends say, liked to chase the dragon, heat black tar heroin on tinfoil, and inhale the smoke. His habit was an open secret in Vegas. And since Ted seemed to function just fine in the family business, friends looked the other way. But the state of Nevada did not.
In the late 80s, Ted's gambling license was suspended because of his heroin habit. So he promised to cut out the drugs. He took regular drug tests to show that he was getting clean. And he told his family he'd be back here at the casino soon.
But then came that one little decision, one insignificant whim that changed everything. It was one night in 1995. Ted Binion decided to drop by a favorite old haunt, a topless club called Cheetahs. And here's where he was, having a drink, when he looked up and saw his future. Her name was Sandy Murphy. She was 23, a beauty contest runner-up from Bellflower, California, on vacation in Vegas.
Every young person, when they want to go on vacation and have fun, so to speak, wants to go to Vegas and gamble and go see shows and the nightlife, and that's kind of how I ended up there.
But Vegas isn't often kind, and it wasn't kind to Sandy. She lost $13,000 playing blackjack at Caesar's Palace. And now, here was this hotshot named Ted who tried to hand her a wad of crisp $100 bills.
You were afraid that he was saying to you, you're a hooker.
So it really offended me, and I, threw, more or less pushed his hand away and gave him his money back.
No one had ever done that to Ted before, and it was love at first sight. Soon, Sandy moved into Ted's big house on Palomino Lane. But remember, there were other Binions, and they were not happy.
I still didn't think it was going to be something forever. I still thought that it would be something that would just be something that would come into his life and go on, and then there'd be someone else. But I was wrong.
The family smelled a gold digger. Ted's personal fortune was estimated at $75 million. He was even known to keep a stash of cash hidden in his home, as much as $1 million. And Sandy enjoyed Ted's money. He bought her a Mercedes, and soon she became famous for her shopping sprees at Neiman Marcus. But if love was grand, life was rocky. In the late 90s, Ted was spotted frequently in the company of reputed gangster Herbie Blitzstein, who, according to police, had ties with the Chicago mob. The Nevada Gaming Commission was not amused.
This here is like my whole life, my whole job.
In March of 1998, Binion's gaming license was permanently revoked. And now, out of business, no gaming commission to watch him, Ted went back to heroin.
I think when he lost his gaming license, that he lost hope. And I think that he wanted something to ease the pain.
By state law, Ted now had to get all his belongings out of the Horseshoe Casino, including an incredible stash which had been sitting for years just feet beneath the incessant ching of the one-armed bandits. 46,000 pounds of silver bars and coins he kept in the basement, worth $7 million. But Ted had a problem: where to put it all. The problem was on his mind one night at a swanky Vegas restaurant just off the Strip. He excused himself, went to the bathroom, and met, quite by chance, Rick Tavish.
We're at the urinal, and Teddy looks over at me, and he takes his right hand. Obviously, he's right-handed. "How you doing, Ted Binion?" Right then and there, you're like, I like this guy. He's different.
It's funny how things work out. Tavish happened to own a Vegas trucking company. He had time on his hands. His wife and 2 kids were in Montana, and so he hung out with Ted. The two became friends and cooked up a plan for that $7 million 23-ton stash of silver. In the middle of the night on July 7th, 1998, Tavish and a crew loaded Ted's treasure onto a truck. With Binion literally riding shotgun, they drove to the family ranch in Pahrump, 70 miles north of Vegas. They buried the silver in an underground vault Tavish had built for Ted on Binion land off the main road right in the middle of town.
Being around Ted Binion, bizarre was normal. I mean, it was a real novelty to go deal with this silver. It was something, it was hard work, but when do you ever have the chance to do it again?
Under the same bizarre heading, Ted's heroin habit. It was, at least according to Sandy, getting worse. But nothing could have prepared her for this. September 17th, 1998. Sandy Murphy's 911 call summoned paramedics to Palomino Lane, and there they found Ted Binion dead. Lying on a mat on his living room floor, an empty bottle of an antidepressant called Xanax was at his side. Partially used doses of heroin were discovered in the bathroom. And hysterical Sandy Murphy was taken to the hospital. What happened? Could something sinister be behind Ted's death? Ted's alleged mob friend, Herbie Blitzstein, had been executed gangland style just a few months earlier. Reporters at the Palomino house suspected a link.
Any possibility of, the mafia or anything having any?
Nothing, no, nothing at this point to indicate there was any type of force or anything like that.
Probably it was just an awful accident. Soon the county medical examiner ruled that Ted Binion died after ingesting a deadly combination of heroin and Xanax. In fact, police learned Ted had bought 12 doses, or balloons, of heroin the day before, along with 120 Xanax pills. Had he killed himself? Ted's sister Becky didn't buy it. Ted, she said, would never have committed suicide and knew his drugs too well to overdose.
Well, it's very easy when you have a drug user to just say, he OD'd and sweep it under the carpet and it would be over. And that's just about what was ready to happen.
So Becky hired her own investigators, gumshoes who scoured every potential lead, every possible witness. And they uncovered a shocker. Ted's live-in girlfriend, Sandy Murphy, so distraught over the death of the love of her life, had been having an affair since that summer. Her lover, Ted's good friend, Rick Tavish. Sandy claimed she was jilted first, that Ted hadn't found another woman, but another passion.
The love affair was over.
Because he found a new friend and he didn't love himself anymore. And you don't have to love yourself to love heroin, because heroin doesn't love anyone.
He didn't care about her. This girl's a girl who needs to be loved. She's a one-guy gal.
News of the affair didn't shake the police theory that Ted died of an overdose, accidentally or on purpose. At least, not right away.
Of course, when we had the silver theft, that changed the complexion of everything.
Silver theft? 2 days after Ted Binion died, Rick Tavish and 2 other men were discovered by police digging up Ted's $7 million in silver from the vault Tavish himself had built. And there was something else. After the Binion family searched through the Palomino house, they said the home security cameras were out of commission, and all the money Ted kept there, as much as $1 million, had been cleaned out too. Now police were convinced Ted Binion had been murdered.
It was corroborated by physical evidence.
They accused Sandy Murphy and Rick Tavish. The motives? Money, sex, greed. The Binion family said justice was about to be done. But whose justice? Murphy and Tavish pleaded not guilty and claimed Ted's family was setting them up. Ted's family wanted Sandy's piece of the will.
I think ultimately they know what the truth is in their heart. I think they're in denial. And I think they wanted someone to pay. And I was easy to pick on.
I feel stronger about my beliefs than I have before. I feel very strong that they had something to do with the death of my brother.
And so the gambling capital of the world had a new high-stakes game just yards away from the Horseshoe Casino in the county house. Who or what killed Ted Binion? It was a gamble no one involved could afford to lose, and nobody was laying down odds.
And nobody would lay down the cards when it came down to the trial. When we come back, we're going to take you inside the courtroom and answer this important question. Did Ted kill himself, or was he really murdered by the widow? The answer to the question when we come back. Stay with us. Returning to our story, Ted Binion was either murdered or committed suicide because of money, stake, because of money, gambling, and all the drugs. Like we talked about earlier, this case will end up going to 3 things: murder, gambling, and drugs. Drugs, money, and murder. That's just how it is. But Ted was tied up with the mob, so he buried his fortunes underneath. Now, the girlfriend's on trial along with the affair. Who would be jailed? Once again, Keith Morrison.
We felt that we had a pretty compelling case of murder in the first degree.
Prosecutors David Roger and David Wall were assigned to handle the case of the casino murder, the death of Ted Binion. But they had a serious problem. There were no eyewitnesses, no smoking gun. To convict Sandy Murphy and her boyfriend Rick Tavish, they would have to weave together circumstantial evidence.
First, prosecutors set out to show that Ted Binion could not possibly have committed suicide or even overdosed on the combination of heroin and Xanax found in his system. The state painted a very careful picture of Ted Binion as an optimistic and upbeat man, and a man who knew his drugs far too well to ever overdose.
Prosecutors brought to the stand Ted's ex-wife, Doris Binion, and moved quickly to knock down any notion Ted could have killed himself. Doris testified Ted was a careful addict who smoked heroin, which, she said, was a safe and controlled way to use it.
Did you observe him use heroin?
Yes.
Will you describe for the jury how Mr. Binion ingested heroin?
He would put it on a small piece of foil, and he would burn it and smoke it.
How frequently did Mr. Binion use heroin?
He used heroin every day until from about 1980, late 80 to 1987.
Enrique Lacayo was Ted's neighbor and doctor. He prescribed the 120 Xanax relaxant pills Ted got the day before he died. It was more than he'd ever given Ted before, but Lacayo said he wasn't concerned because, again, Ted knew how to handle himself.
Did you have an opinion based on your conversations with him whether Mr. Binion was knowledgeable about heroin and drugs?
I believe so. He appeared to me like he knew about the drug.
When you spoke to Mr. Binion, did Mr. Binion appear to you to be contemplating suicide?
No.
If he had, would you have still written the prescription for him?
No.
Prosecutors even managed to get Peter Sheridan, Ted Binion's longtime drug dealer, onto the stand. He said the 12 balloons of heroin he sold Ted the day before his death were more than Binion had ever ordered. But, Sheridan said, this wasn't Ted getting ready to kill himself. This was Ted getting ready for vacation, ordering extra drugs to take to his ranch.
What did Mr. Binion talk about?
He talked about wanting to go up to Pahrump and maybe ride some horses.
During the time that you were with him, did he talk about committing suicide?
No.
Did Mr. Binion tell you that he wanted the 12 balloons for his extended stay in Pahrump?
Yes.
No, said the prosecutors, it was not suicide, it was murder. But what was the motive? And what conspiracy was there between Sandy Murphy and Rick Tavish?
The affection, the companionship, the love, I guess, for at least the several months leading up to Ted Binion's death, she got from Rick Tavish. She stayed with Ted Binion for the month.
And they claimed created a plan to get rid of him. How? That was part 2 of the state's case. Binion's longtime maid, Mary Montoya, showed that Sandy and Rick created the opportunity to commit murder. She testified that on the day before Ted's death, Sandy Murphy abruptly told her to leave early.
I was in Ted's room because he wanted me to clean it out really good.
Anything unusual happen as you were in there at about 2:30?
Yes, Sandy came up to me and asked me to go home early. And I said I wasn't done, but she said, oh, that's okay, something like, I don't trust you anymore.
Did you know what Ms. Murphy meant by not trusting you?
No.
And there was more to make Montoya suspicious. She also testified that the next day, September 17th, the day Binion died, Murphy called to tell her not to come to the Palomino house at all because Ted was ill. Now, the state said, Sandy Murphy was alone in the house with Ted, free to do as she pleased.
Did you ever see Mr. Binion again?
No.
Yes, prosecutors said there was opportunity. But what about motive? Ted Binion's attorney and childhood friend James Brown took the stand with a stunner. Brown said Binion called him on the day before he died, angry and desperate.
Take Sandy out of the will if she doesn't kill me tonight. If I'm dead, you'll know what happened. And I said, all right, Ted. And then he went immediately and he says, you know, I figured out my net worth. He said, I didn't know I was worth that much. He said, I'm worth $73 million.
And to prove Sandy Murphy was motivated by money, prosecutors played this videotape showing they said an uncaring and callous Sandy as she went through the Palomino house the very day after Ted died. Rifling through drawers.
Make sure you get all this.
Complaining about missing items. Stomping across the scene of Ted's death.
Tell me about the tape and about that day.
Oh, well, Sandy Murphy, the grieving widow, showed a very different side of her personality. She showed the greediness that was truly at the heart of her personality.
Then, on the next day, 2 days after Ted's death, more evidence, the state claimed, that money was the motive leading to murder. That's when police found Rick Tavish emptying Binion's silver vault.
Here we have a man and a woman who were having extramarital affairs. Within 36 hours, they are digging up Ted Binion's silver.
State your name and spell your last name for the record.
Sergeant Ed Howard confronted Rick Tavish at the vault.
I asked what was inside the trailer. He said there's nothing.
Did you see Deputy Pinnock look inside to the top of that trailer?
Yes.
Describe for us exactly what you remember of Deputy Pinnock saying after he looked inside.
He said there's a load of silver in there.
A shitload of silver?
Did he then climb down?
Yes.
What did you do at that point?
Mr. Tavish was standing right beside me, and he said, okay, I lied.
Did he explain to you what he was doing there?
Yes.
What did he tell you at that time?
He said that Ted had told him if anything ever happened to him, he was supposed to come get the money out of the vault, take the money to Los Angeles, turn it into cash, and put it in a trust account for Ted's daughter.
Now the state moved on to part 3 of its case, showing just how this murder was committed.
Please have a seat.
Former New York City pathologist Michael Baden took the stand. He was a star defense witness in the O.J. Simpson trial and in hundreds of other murder cases. Baden began by claiming that Ted Binion didn't die of a drug overdose at all, intentional or not. According to Baden, there just wasn't enough heroin and Xanax in Ted's blood to cause death.
It is extremely rare for a person to die of too much heroin or morphine at these low levels.
No, Baden said the cause of death was something else. Suffocation.
He died from some obstruction to his nose and mouth, couldn't breathe in, and pressure on his chest that also interfered with the bellows action of the chest.
For prosecutors, that was the bottom line, and tied up all the strands of their circumstantial evidence in the murder of Ted Binion.
He had faults like everybody else, but he was a human being. He didn't deserve Sandra Murphy's betrayal. He didn't deserve to be suffocated in his living room by 2 people he trusted.
But the jury was about to hear about a very different Ted Binion, far from the cheerful, if irresponsible, heroin addict portrayed by the state. This Ted Binion was a violent man with an out-of-control habit, and Sandy Murphy, the jury would be told, was not a murderer, but a victim. It all started.
So who would be the victim and who would be the murderer? Coming up, we're going to hear the other side from Ted Binion, and later on, we're going to hear what the jury had to say. Please stay with us. Back to our story. Ted Binion was murdered by Sandy Murphy, but the defense wants to say that, Sandy Murphy was not the murderer, that Ted Binion killed himself. So far, what you've heard was three parts to the trial, from the doctors to the friends and even to the ex-wife. But What would the defense have to say about the other side of Ted Binion? Was he angry, or was he just a gambling man looking for some money? Here's Keith Morrison.
I would never hurt Teddy. I've never hurt anyone in my life. And that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of.
Prosecutors had just painted Sandy Murphy as a greedy femme fatale in cahoots with boyfriend Rick Tavish to kill Ted Binion. Could this woman be so evil? Of course not, said the defense, which began its case by painting a very different picture of Ted Binion and Sandy Murphy.
This Sandy Murphy was no Black Widow spider, but a young woman in over her head, trapped in a relationship with a mercurial man, a drug addict, who, try as she might, she could not keep under control, who one day spun so far out of control that he died. Remember, prosecutors said this was a murder, not suicide, not an overdose, because Ted knew his drugs well and kept it all under control. But did he?
As a result of your divorce...
Defense attorney John Monmouth cross-examined Ted's ex-wife Doris, who told a story of a man who was frequently out of control. The kind of man who could have overdosed or killed himself.
You indicated that in November of 1994, someone had indicated to Mr. Binion that you were having an affair.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, when he did suspect that, one day he came home and gave you a very severe beating. Is that true?
Yes.
And as a, further, and not to go into it overly, there come a time you were laying on the floor that he started kicking you.
Yes.
And Doris admitted Ted was paranoid, often imagined things while on heroin, not the picture of a man who mastered his habit. But what about later, when he was with Sandy Murphy? Was he better then?
State your name and spell your last name for the record.
The defense called Sandy's stepmother, who testified that he beat Sandy too, and that she confronted him.
I went to his home. He was actually in bed the whole time. He never got up. And I went into his bedroom and stood at the foot of his bed and talked to him.
What does Sandy look like?
She had a black eye and she had a big fat lip.
Okay.
And she was bruised.
Why didn't you walk out on him?
You know, everybody always asks me that question, and it's really tough to answer. But all I can tell you is that when you love somebody and they're sick, where I come from, you don't quit.
If you add heroin to...
Ted's doctor, remember, said he wasn't concerned when he prescribed 120 Xanax pills for Binion. But under cross-examination, he admitted he was unaware of something crucial that very day.
You indicated that you told Mr. Binion not to drink while he was taking the Xanax, correct?
Many times.
And you were not aware that he was going to be ordering 12 balloons of heroin later on that evening, were you?
No.
And the doctor admitted that, yes, a combination of that much heroin and Xanax could be deadly. The defense then turned to Ted's drug dealer. Peter Sheridan was a key to the state's case that this was not a suicide. Ted bought all that heroin, Sheridan testified, only because he was going on vacation. But the defense said, don't believe him. Because, as Sheridan admitted on cross-examination, he made a handsome deal with prosecutors.
And they told you you wouldn't be charged with anything, correct?
No, he said if I wanted to, I could get a lawyer.
Okay.
But I mean, it was...
But don't worry about it. Is that what the deal is?
More or less.
Had the drug dealer lied to support a prosecution theory and stay out of jail? Was the idea that Ted was just a nice guy with a controlled habit a sham? But even if the jury bought those arguments, what about the motives, the affair, the money? The defense had theories about those too. There was Ted's maid. Remember? She told prosecutors Sandy Murphy ordered her to leave the day before Ted's death and told her not to come back the next day, giving Murphy plenty of time to commit murder. But what about her credibility? The defense accused the maid of holding a grudge against Murphy ever since Sandy found her and her husband alone in the house, when they shouldn't have been there.
And you were there with your husband in that evening, correct?
Yes.
And you were drinking a beer at that time, right?
No,
You weren't drinking any beers?
no, I wasn't. My husband was, but I wasn't.
Okay. Sandy Murphy got upset that you were in the house, right?
At first she was worried.
Did she get upset with you with being in the house?
She got upset.
And after this time, did someone take the keys to that house back from you?
Yes.
And then there was Binion's attorney, who gave prosecutors greed as a motive for murder. James Brown testified that Ted said, "Cut Sandy out of my will before she kills me." But under cross-examination, it didn't seem Brown took Ted's warning very seriously.
As a result of that telephone call, did you call the police department?
No.
Did you call any human being regarding what you heard from Mr. Ted Binion about the possibility he could be killed?
At what point?
On the 16th, September 16th, 1998.
No, I told no one other than my wife immediately after I got off the phone.
In fact, he admitted he didn't even connect that phone call to Ted's death. Not at first, anyway.
My opinion on the 17th and the 18th was that he probably died of a heart attack. Years of abusing his body had finally caught up to him, and he died of a heart attack.
Of a heart attack.
Because of that, he said, Binion attorneys did not have the Palomino house sealed off as a crime scene after the death. Sandy Murphy's lawyer, John Mamet, says for 3 days the house remained unlocked as the Binions and Jim Brown went through it.
He and others were going through this house at that time on the 17th.
When perhaps it should have been a closed-off crime scene.
Absolutely. They should have kept the scene totally pristine so it could be investigated. Then do an inventory of what's in the house and what's not in the house. And let's see if a burglary or robbery had occurred in that house. Let's see if there was, in fact, a homicide.
Indeed, on cross-examination, attorney James Brown admitted the only person he kept out of the Palomino house was Sandy Murphy.
But you were telling the cop that she has no right to go into the house, didn't you say that?
Yes, my objective at that point, when I could see that he was clearly going to allow her into the house, was to gain time so that she couldn't go in the house.
Can I take my picture that says Ted on it at least?
And that's why, defense argued, Sandy Murphy was so angry on this videotape. In fact, she had her lawyer make this video when she did get inside the house, because she felt the Binions were stealing from her.
And also get the china that they had taken out of the cabinet.
But there was still that most damaging event, Rick Tavish emptying out Ted Binion's $7 million silver vault. How could that possibly be innocent? On cross-examination by Tavish lawyer Louis Palazzo, Sergeant Ed Howard, who was at the vault that very night, admitted that what appeared fishy was actually no secret at all. Rick Tavish, he admitted, had called the county sheriff to tell him exactly what he was about to do.
Mr. Tavish advised you that he had talked to the sheriff 3 times that day, correct?
That's correct.
You became aware that the sheriff had confirmed talking with Mr. Tavish, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, earlier on when you had arrived, Mr. Tavish was saying, please call Mr. Lesky, Sheriff Lesky, he'll tell you everything's okay, I'm allowed to be out here, correct?
Something like that, yes.
Why did you go to that silver stash in the desert and pull it out of the ground?
Let me answer it this way. Ted always said, when I die, they come out like vultures. He wanted the silver was a pet peeve of his. He wanted that silver kept safe. He wanted that silver, the proper thing done with it, because the silver wasn't in the will.
No, the defense said Tavish was not there to steal the silver, but to protect it. To prove that, they went to Tom Standish, Ted Binion's divorce lawyer, who testified Ted did talk about getting to that silver if he died.
Isn't it true, sir, that he stated that on a number of occasions with a number of different individuals present?
On 2 occasions that I know about.
Well, weren't there 3 occasions? There was one occasion where Ted, Sandy, and you were present.
Yes.
Then there was another occasion where Rick Tavish, this other fellow you were having lunch with, and Ted and you were present.
Yes.
And then you had a conversation with Ted about the same thing.
Right, that was just he and I.
That's 3 occasions right there, isn't it?
If you count me as other people, then it's 3.
Now the defense faced its toughest hurdle. to shake the testimony of the prosecution's star witness, Michael Baden, who said Ted Binion was suffocated. First, defense lawyers tried to paint him as simply a hired gun.
You got paid on the case, didn't you?
Paid for my time, yes.
Paid for your time. And in fact, you got paid by the Binion estate, didn't you?
Yes.
Then the defense called its own star pathologist, Cyril Wecht, who worked on the John Benet Ramsey case and hundreds of others. He had a different theory about Binion's death.
In my opinion, based upon a reasonable degree of medical certainty, the cause of death was what I would call acute combined drug toxicity. Heroin and Xanax, I would consider the manner of death more likely than not to have been suicide.
That seemed to leave it in the hands of two final witnesses, Sandy Murphy and Rick Tavish. But in the biggest gamble of this high-stakes drama, both decided not to take the stand.
And my client felt that she did not have to because there was absolutely no homicide shown in this case whatsoever.
Is that how the jury would see it? Sandy Murphy and Rick Tavish were about to find out.
And we're going to find out what happens. Are they guilty or not guilty? The conclusion to Keith Morrison's Casino when we come back. Stay with us. And now the conclusion to our story. You've heard all the evidence, all the sides of the story, from the star witness to the girlfriend to the ex-wife to the divorce attorney from the maid. All the evidence points to two questions. Was it suicide, or was it all these testimonies, all these other sides of the story leads to one question. Was it suicide or was it murder? Remember, that damning piece of evidence was all about the silver that was buried on that Vegas landfill. The question for the jurors, was it murder or suicide? Did Sandy really kill Ted Binion? Once again, Keith Morrison.
This was a very intelligent jury. We felt that we presented them with a very compelling case.
I felt like I had really demonstrated to them that they were just being presented a bunch of nonsense.
All the strategy in the world doesn't change a central fact when you pick a jury, in Vegas or anywhere. What you get is a roll of the dice. And this case, like most murder trials, hung on circumstantial evidence. No eyewitnesses, no smoking gun. Instead, 12 people would have to sift through documents and testimony and search for the truth. After an 8-week trial with more than 100 witnesses, could they find it?
It was not a cut and dry case, as other high-profile cases we've witnessed not too long ago.
We sat down with 9 of the 12 jurors, 4 housewives, 2 retirees, an office manager, a computer programmer, and a wildlife biologist.
What did you think of the case the defense made, that the state simply hadn't put it together?
Well, some of us, I believe, thought that maybe the prosecution hadn't put enough of the case together.
After all, weren't these just fresh-faced kids, unaccustomed to the way Vegas, some say, can turn a person hard? These didn't look like cold-blooded killers.
But my first impression was, my God, they're so young. When I first saw them, absolutely, because I had never seen any pictures yet. And oh my Lord, my son's that age.
And what about that big gamble not to put the defendants on the stand?
Does that bother you that they didn't testify? Did you want to hear from them?
I didn't
particularly.
And then there was this surprise, how jurors saw one of the state's blockbuster witnesses, James Brown, Ted Binion's attorney.
He said, take Sandy out of the will. If she doesn't kill me tonight, if I'm dead, you'll know what happened.
We discounted that.
Because that's a headline sort of statement, and yet that didn't have that much to do with your decision.
No.
Jurors said they didn't consider Brown's testimony because it wasn't corroborated. No one else heard that phone call with Ted. But as deliberations continued, jurors also began to discount some key defense points. Ted Binion, they decided, was not the kind of man who could ever commit suicide.
If he was going to commit suicide and he was that upset, Ted would have took 4 people with him. He wouldn't have gone by himself. I mean, in the era times Ted Binion lived, you know, the cowboy era, so I don't think he would have gone by himself. He would have taken people with him that he was upset with.
The evidence is he went and bought all those pills, those Xanax pills, and he bought way more heroin than he usually got. Isn't that a sign?
But they were going
He was going on vacation
next week in Peru. I mean, you want to take stuff to party with. Like we take a lot of potato chips and dip or potato salad.
And as for the other defense theory that Binion accidentally overdosed,
So he was a heroin user, and supposedly, if there's such a thing as a smart heroin user, and he had been using Xanax and heroin off and on for 20 years, and he hadn't done himself in.
but where to go from there? How to tie things together one way or another? Day after day ticked by with no verdict, as the jury weighed all the circumstantial evidence. If this was a murder, jurors had to be sure about motive, and that took them to this. The video of Sandy Murphy going through the house the day after Ted's death.
What kind of a person did you see on that videotape? Why don't you start?
Oh, she's very materialistic. She was cursing. She was running through the house. You know, this is mine, this is mine.
A loved one you've lost, you don't go through the house ranting and raving and maybe just for me, but knocking his hat off the piano stool.
That was one dramatic piece of evidence. And jurors say this was another, the silver vault.
Was he trying to steal the silver? Did he want?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yes. But what about Ted Binion's one of his last requests? If something happens to me, go get that silver and get it to my daughter right away.
Ted Binion was a smart man. If that's what he really wanted to do, he would have done it, you know, legally. He would have made it an effort, you know, an arrangement, right, to have that done.
And jurors said it didn't matter that Tavish told the sheriff what he was doing. Tavish, jurors said, still knew it was a crime to open that vault without written approval from Ted Binion. Finally, jurors turned to the testimony of pathologist Michael Baden, who testified Ted Binion was suffocated to death.
What'd you make of this idea?
Possibility.
It's plausible.
Biden was the expert's expert.
Yeah.
But what were the odds of this? The jury deliberated for 8 long days. Everyone tried to imagine, what were they thinking? Louis Palazzo was Rick Tavish's lawyer.
I felt like if they got over the hump, that we would have probably a hung jury, because I felt like there was probably tension and friction developed.
We decided that we were not going to have a hung jury, no matter how long it took us.
Finally, on day 8, Sandy Murphy and Rick Tavish were brought back into the courtroom.
I reached over and I grabbed John Mama's hand and I said, "Hold on, John." I said, "Because we're going down today." And he said, "I'm not so sure about that, Sandy."
We, the jury, the above entitled case, find the defendant, Sandra Renee Murphy, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit murder and or robbery. Guilty. Richard Bennett Tavish as follows. Guilty.
Snake Eyes. Guilty on all counts.
I think all of us just felt sick to our stomachs, and some of the gals cried. You didn't want to make that decision. You know, there it was.
Contrary to what they say, there is no way that any reasonable person could ever say that they can come to the conclusion that they did based on the evidence that was presented at the trial.
Sandy Murphy and Rick Tavish had been drawn like moths to the strip of garish light that runs down the desert floor, and ultimately encountered darkness. They were sentenced to life in prison. Tavish will be eligible for parole in 26 years, Murphy in 22. But they're moving ahead with an appeal. And Sandy Murphy says she'll win this time because she knows who the real killer is.
Who killed Ted Binion?
Teddy did. Ultimately, when you take drugs, you know what the end result's going to be. Teddy knew the score the first time he got high, and he knew the score the last time he was going to get high. He knew what the end result was going to be, and he chose to do it anyway.
The appeal by Sandy Murphy and Rick Tavish is expected to be filed early this summer.
A key to their case, lawyers tell us, is an FBI memo about an interview with a hitman uncovered after the trial. In it, the hitman claims the mob had plans to kill Ted Binion and loot his house. Prosecutors have seen the memo, but say it will make no difference. If you would like to take a look at key evidence, testimony, and documents in the case, you can log on to our website. The address is dateline.msnbc.com.
Now, if I had to look at those documents, then we would show it to you. Okay. Here's the thing, though. Sandy says she didn't do it, but she says he killed himself. If she were to take a lie detector test, that would prove to the prosecution that, it wouldn't make a difference. Prosecution wouldn't make a difference. So I'll turn over to the paper. It'd be like this. Sandy, you came here and took a lie detector test. This was administered by Dan Wieberkoff. Sandy, you were asked these questions. Did you kill? You were asked these questions. Did you murder Ted Binion? Your answer was no. You said no. Did you happen to steal the silver? No, hold on. Sandy came here and took a lie detector test. And we asked her these questions. Do you know for sure who killed Ted Binion? You answered no. Did you happen to kill Ted Binion? You answered no. Did you witness Ted Binion use drugs? You answered yes. Did Ted Binion commit suicide? You answered yes. And results for the rest of those questions, except for one. Sorry. It's just if I was a lie detector administrator, it'd be tough for me to find the right questions, to find the right answers. Lie detector experts would be like saying, okay, you should ask this certain amount of question. It's just asking the specifics in every case. And in this case right here, it was just a gamble. It was just like snake eyes. So it'd be like this. Sandy came here and took a lie detector test. She was asked this one question. Did you kill Ted Binion? You answer no. And the results for her lie detector test is that she did not tell the truth. That was deception indicated. But moving on to the rest of the questions. Do you know, did Ted Binion overdose himself? She answered yes. Yeah, that was not deception. Did you know that your names were taken out of the will? She answered no. And she told, and non-deception indicated. You see, non-deception means that you didn't lie, you told the truth. Deception indicates that you're lying. That's what deception and non-deception is all about. Now, if the other person did the murder, then if it wasn't Sandy, if it was the other person, then that person could, have a lesser sentence. But the goal here, because that's what Vegas is all about. It's like the old saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Here's a sneak peek we have for you coming up on Wednesday.
Yeah, see what our hidden cameras reveal this time. Home repair cheaters caught in the act. Dateline, NBC Next.
Who pays more for home repairs, men or women?
I really believe that just being female, I was taken advantage of.
Does gender make a difference when repair people make a service call?
All I know is she told me the stove won't light.
Dateline wanted to know, and so we put service people to the test.
So if the light is off, the repairman should know right away that the beams aren't lined up. Good.
And we had our hidden cameras rolling.
Your total is $405.87.
Were men treated better?
I was shocked.
Were women cheated more?
He was telling me that he needed to replace several pieces.
You'll be able to tell us what you think will happen live and online. Tonight, Lee Thompson with Home Improvement. An interactive Dateline special.
All right. It's going to be different. So, Home Improvement. That's coming up on tomorrow. That's all for this edition of Giving Break Tuesday going to Wednesday. We'll see you again for Giving Break. Was it going to tomorrow for Giving Break Wednesday? For all of us here, YouTube, man, give me a break. Stop bullying, speak up. Concentration, not strength. No jaywalking. Take care of yourself and each other. Good night.